One day, very soon Jesus will return. Before he does, all these things must happen. Jesus is right when he said pride ruins a man. It also destroys a country. Literally. Why ignore a God-given epiphany? They will laugh, make jokes, not believing me or you. However, they did the same to Noah. Have any of you learned from history what not to be like? Moreover, Jesus said, in the last days it will be as it was in the days of Noah. Jesus was referring to people being lovers of themselves, instead of lovers of God. While people in Noah's days laughed and mocked Noah, saying, "Why do you build a ship in the desert? It has never rained in the desert." Calling him a fool, as they were, for not believing God told him to, while protecting him and his family from death. We must accept that no matter what, we will meet people who choose to stay as they are, without the purest love guiding their heart. I say this again. Jesus said, in the last days it will be as it was in the days of Noah. Why then do we worry as if God did not already know it would be? It is as he foretold now. What happened then, is now. I warn you as I know you will continue ignoring God and me. For this it will happen as God foretold. As it was predetermined as God explained what it was going to be like. God is giving you a choice. He has given you a choice. Free will. Just as God sent a global flood in his days. Therefore, heaven and earth will pass away. It is not too late, yet. Why must you laugh? Do you want to lose your life, forever? It was not a question. You cannot even fathom what you will suffer. When God warns you, do not laugh. He does lovingly. No, I will never claim whom I am not. Moreover, only who God says I am. God has already explained who I am in the book of Daniel. You may read about me as God says who I am in chapter 10. In the beginning he declares, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me as I was detained there with the king of Persia, Iran. Well, I came to help God by authoring this book. Chapter 10 verse 20 declares, Soon, I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first let me tell you what is written in the Book of Truth, this book. No one supports me against them, mental health and government, except Michael your prince, and in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him. Chapter 12 verse 1 declares, Around that time Michael the great prince, who protects your people, while authoring this book, the Book of Truth, and offering it free of charge, to protect God's people with knowledge people hid, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not been since the beginning of nations until then, global distress with COVID and financial global economic uncertainty. I just believe God. I do not need an explanation for why I do. He refers to me. I do not believe men who fear I am right. Moreover, when God speaks through someone, he has chosen to be ever present within whom he speaks through. We do not control when and whether a person is born at any given time in history. While having a purpose for being who God had in mind, God knew they would be. Nor can you control whether I am who God said I would be. While comparing these three verses, we find they all relate as one unifying awareness of reason. While the meaning of a birth and life of a man who would be born a prince, yet not be aware I was until I was older. While without need nor want, except faith, God has declared to me my identity. Faith is without knowing for sure, while it is believing without apparent physical evidence. As my faith alone declares it is reality. The only way you are going to know for sure I am being honest, while what I have said is true, is to read Daniel chapter 10, 11, 12 for yourself. Use the New International Version as I have, NIV. How we should pray and not. If you have a question, do not ask who is just as confused as you are. Since God is all-knowing, ask Him in a quiet place, without distractions and without an audience, and pray to God with need, not want. The best place to ask God, keeping it between you and Him, is within the mind. This is where epiphanies, God's thoughts, are received. The heart is where God's thoughts form. The mind is where we become aware of them. The mind is also where we decide and process them as we acknowledge either God's voice, thoughts, or the devil's thoughts. When we decide one over another more often, we develop traits and beliefs forming character of either over time. When we push aside bad thoughts, holding close to good thoughts, we are choosing to develop a habit of acknowledging God's thoughts alone. What better place to communicate with your provider than where God's thoughts are? We get what we ask for not just by believing, but by directly asking God, not men. Do not say anything. Think about everything. We just want to be seen and become dependent on those who hear us while praying aloud. If we do not keep our thoughts between us and God, within our mind, we do not acknowledge God provides without using our own hearts this way. God chose us not because we are strong in this life, but because we are weak in this life. Therefore, take hold of weakness. As we are weak, and the world acknowledges only human strength and effort, God becomes strong within us, making human strength weak at the knees as love weakens human efforts. What is weak for the world can be used to bring shame on those who think and believe they are wiser and stronger than God within us. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the wise. Remember, love is not weak. Shedding tears is not weak. Love is God and love is not weak. God's concluding arguments, reasons for injustice in symbol order. GGA. Those I am accusing do not create laws incriminating themselves while overseeing creating laws. However, God's laws are just and fair for those men violate, while wicked men believe they are not deserving of God's consequences. God gives them what they want, as He rules over the righteous as well as the wicked. Moreover, is fair and adequate with not giving the wicked what they need. GGB. While man's laws allow justice, only responsible parties never receive consequence, those creating laws. God is waiting for them to repent. GGC. Question: is it fair for people to receive justice as others do not? GGD. Time barring is not fair when I have a solid case proving innocence. GGE. It is not fair people ignore me as I care about the safety of children, as why I do should matter enough to them to do something about what I am expressing is wrong. It makes me wonder if they care about children as I do, while they continue ignoring and pushing aside my concerns. Ignoring me means they do not care about them as I do, even as God does, even while supplying evidence of the involved cause, mental health. GGF. Moreover, mental health has so much influence on the news and in government as they're still in power, even when guilty of impairing an individual's judgment. Who has molested children because they did impair his judgment? Puts into question the validity of if they have sound reasoning. GGG. Put it this way, if lawmakers create laws protecting individuals against impairing their judgment, they will find themselves prosecuted for creating laws initially making it legal to impair someone's judgment, while approving the use of drugs that do. GGH. Instead, they decided immunity would unjustify the rights and freedoms of those they convict, time barring the accused. While this removes credibility of guilt as they cannot sue them nor prosecute them, which puts into question not just sound doctrine, but a sound mind. GGI. You may ask, it depends on what is in the bill of law. If they gave themselves immunity, cannot have a hearing to hear your reasons for innocence nor try someone in court after a set number of years. GGJ. In this case, they are supplying themselves with immunity, which means they do not wish for their conscience to be addressed, as they will never be held accountable. GGK. We should not run from our guilt. Yet, lawmakers run from us as they lie to us. When we do not face what we have done, we do not change things. It does not matter how uncomfortable a politician feels when reading this. I would rather make them uncomfortable, so they change their approaches, then continue allowing them to cause children to be. GGL. For me, I am not running away like a coward from my past. I am addressing who I am confident is liable for my past decision. Knowing they would never be prosecuted is a cause of great concern for me when it affects the growth of a child's faith. GGM. However, lawmakers depend on public support. To obtain it, they need to please the public. They need to focus on a defendant as guilty, hoping the public will do the same, while never allowing the public to hear the defendant's explanation of innocence. Why? Lawmakers know the public's focus is on the action the defendant made. Creating laws pleasing the public's focus ensures a focus of defense against the public being aware a defendant is not responsible. GGN. If a defendant has a solid case worth pursuing, they become worried something may happen like what did to lawmakers when President Trump was at his end term, while supplying immunity to themselves in this process. Their guilt alone is contempt. GGO. How would the public ever support them with another term in office as insight reveals their guilt, while immunity, time barring, continues injustice? The public will never know they are liable for causing child sex abuse to go ahead, they say. However, this book expresses an honest perspective of insight, revealing what they fear getting out can cause the public to do horrific things to those liable. You would think lawmakers would have foreseen the outcome of not telling the public the truth about why sex offenses occur on children repeatedly. You would also question why they are still allowing drug companies to manufacture these drugs, even commercializing them both as a benefit and as having life-threatening consequences, while they know these drugs restrict good decisions. Why then are they still allowing these drugs a place in our society, when a good way to decide is restricted from a pedophile's awareness, as lawmakers have hidden the truth from the public over time, leading people to believe mental health are great-hearted and compassionate people who would just like to help a traumatized person heal. However, they never expected a person would open a complex issue they have always thought would never be made aware of. As my perspective leads you to be aware what I went through means I will never be naive nor gullible, trusting them again. Well, as I have found clarity in my own decision to seek another opinion. Getting justice is an incredibly challenging thing to disregard, while irrefutable evidence is reliable going through drug effects. GGP. Would the public ever support a future term of any new lawmaker, knowing once in office they have immunity from causing repeated child molestation, laws involving a case where time barring prevents a defendant from a hearing or a lawsuit, even when evidence is justifiable and irrefutable? GGQ. It is not a past defendant's fault they did not know their judgment was impaired until many years later. Especially when the defendant was unaware of his actual diagnosis at the time the crime occurred, even years after. Finally, being aware now what had occurred after time ran out was not my fault either. Mental health continued forcing drugs in me that made me confused and unaware of what was being done to me and everyone for whom I am concerned. GGR. The public wants justice. This is more important to us. While we depend on lawmakers to follow through with their promises, while ignoring me, they prolong injustice. Moreover, are we really receiving justice for actual cause or inaccurate reasons? With a correct view for cause? I express we are not. GGS. Moreover, what the public does not know cannot hurt them, right? Well, in this case, what lawmakers do not believe will have consequences with the public, even God later. GGT. Those liable are never prosecuted having immunity. Is it right that children continue being molested? While lawmakers continue approving drugs, as these drugs impair a molester's judgment? Therefore, the public never receives justice for what lawmakers have allowed, while their children suffer sex abuse at the hands of lawmakers. How does the public reason with this decision? It is not right lawmakers cause a child to be sexually abused, as approving drugs leading a pedophile to repeatedly corrupt a child. GGU. Well, as lawmakers have created laws making themselves immune from prosecution. This tells the public they do deserve justice for being sexually abused. Moreover, never getting it. This will infuriate the public when they find out the truth. I would not be as concerned with how lawmakers will decide to protect themselves. They have already attempted this for years. I would be more concerned about billions of men with children in America. One thing I know for sure. Lawmakers cannot prevent an army of billion family men from avenging what's been done to children they love. Who will assume arms against those liable? Even our law enforcement and military faculties will go against lawmakers and assume arms toward them. There are those in this field who love children. When people in law enforcement and our U.S. military find out those who provided them with employment have lied to them for decades, they will ignore the cries of lawmakers pleading with them to protect them from the public. Child molestation is the most hated crime in any country. As my book will exchange hands no matter how many I can make available. My book will reach everyone in God's time. While lawmakers are liable for approving drugs, they no impair an individual's decision. While these drugs restrict a thought leading us away from a decision to sexually abuse children. However, the public has been blinded by blaming the accused, while the media influences what lawmakers tell them is right. What will the public do to lawmakers after finding out they have been lied to? Have you been to prison? I do not need to explain what happens to molesters there. While their efforts to keep me silent remain in vain, without purpose, useless when God fulfills His promises to me, as God controls the outcome of revealing their vanity and deceit. While circumstances occur unexpectedly, God controlling when and how my book will reveal the truth. God's intent for me is to allow Him to do the work. Why must people believe I will take this right from God? This ideology is useless to me. While confidence in God doing the work keeps me calm in the storm of men judging me inaccurately. I do not trust the opinions of men. While confident in God,